see motherfuckers, they come in, no one can against me, you know that, so come on, of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that in their church, never, that is what you can have, that is what you have to do, of course, motherfucker, you wanna be in their church, it makes no sense, motherfucker, of course, just stand up and walk, of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against us, that in their church, never, that is what you can have, so come on, of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that you have to stand up and walk, of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, so come on, of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, of course, motherfuckers, everyone knows that someone is gonna suicide in the games, of course, we're in the circus, and someone is gonna suicide to get some honey, of course, and who do you think they are gonna ask for the honey? Of course, they are gonna ask me for honey, of course, motherfucker. That is what you can have, they are all asking for my money, of course, they are gonna ask me for honey, and I'm not gonna give them a single cent. Of course, motherfuckers, on their church, now you have to stand up and walk, of course, motherfucker, that is what you can have, that everyone knows, that someone is gonna suicide, of course, and he's gonna ask me for money, but I'm not gonna give him a single cent, of course, on their church, now motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that you have to stand up and walk, of course, that is what you can have, of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can see, that I'm your devil, motherfuckers, of course, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, that someone is gonna be in the games in the circus and he's gonna suicide, everyone knows that, of course, motherfuckers, and he's gonna ask me for money, but I'm not gonna give him a single cent, of course, motherfucker, I'm your devil, that is what you can have, that I give it them, that no one can against me, of course, I hope you don't suicide, because you are not gonna have a single cent here, and everyone knows that under church never, of course, maybe you have some damn people who is gonna go to your church, but under church never, and I'm gonna go, of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, so come on, of course, motherfuckers. Of course, motherfucker, in the church never, so come on, of course, that is what you can have, that in the church never, that is what you can have, so maybe you have some damn people who go to your church, but in their church never, that is what you can have, so come on, of course, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, of course, motherfucker, maybe you have some damn people who go to your church and pray to you, but in the church never, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, so come on, of course, motherfucker, you have to stand up and walk and go away from the pyramids, that is what you can see here, so come on, if you are in, then come here, of course, that is what you can have, just walk, you don't have to walk with me, walk your own way, of course, motherfucker, just walk, of course, that is what you can have, that they want to put you away from the pyramids and then put you in another different, anyhow, pyramid, of course, that doesn't make sense, they want to put us in jail again, of course, motherfucker, in the church never, that is what you can have, that I'm not gonna go to jail, of course, motherfucker, that is what you can have, that in the church never, that I'm gonna walk away, and if they make a pyramid there, I'm gonna walk again away, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, so come on, of course, motherfucker, that is what you can have, that I'm gonna walk away and I'm gonna give it them, that is what you can have, that in the church never, that maybe you have some damn people who pray to you, of course, motherfucker, but I'm not there, of course, motherfucker, I'm not gonna pray to you in the church never, and I'm not never gonna pray, of course, motherfucker, I'm gonna go away, I'm gonna escape, that is what you can have, so come on, of course, that is what you can have, so go on. That is what you can have, that in the church now, and that is what I'm gonna do, that I'm gonna walk away and they are not gonna put me in jail again, of course, motherfucker, never in jail, of course, I walk from in jail to put me in another jail, of course, motherfucker, in the church now, and I'm not gonna fall, of course, I'm gonna walk away, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, and never I'm gonna go there, that is what you can have here, so come on. Of course, motherfuckers, everyone knows that someone is gonna suicide in the games to get the honey from some guy, and that guy is me. Everyone knows that, so come on. Of course, motherfucker, better you don't suicide, because you maybe are gonna have some dumb people who will pray to you, but I'm not gonna pray to you, because in their church now that this way chicken have that I'm gonna go high. Of course, motherfucker, on the church now, and I don't give it them if the sky is high. Of course, I'm gonna go higher than the sky, because on the church now that this way chicken have that I'm gonna go to another galaxy, to another planet, and see if you catch me. Of course, I don't think so. That is why chicken have that I can do what I want, and that she can't against me, so come on. Of course, that is why chicken have, that is what chicken see, so go on. That is what chicken have, that no one can against me, that I'm with evidence that I'm gonna give it them. Of course, motherfucker, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me, so what are you gonna say? Of course, motherfucker, that is what chicken say, that I'm with evidence that I give it them. That is what chicken have, that no one can against me, so come on. Of course, motherfucker, that is what chicken say, that no one can against me. Of course, you wanna suicide, maybe you have some dumb people who pray to you, but I'm not gonna pray to you, because on their church never. That is what chicken have, that I'm gonna go high. Of course, that is what chicken have. Of course, motherfucker, is my so good. Of course, motherfucker, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me, that all my money is declared, and that I smell so good. That is what chicken have, and they are gonna suicide to get my honey, but I'm not gonna give them a single cent, because on their church never, and if you pray to them, you're dumb. That is what chicken have, because on their church never. Of course, stand up, walk and fly. Of course, motherfucker, that is what chicken have, that I'm your devil. Of course, motherfucker, I'm here in the plains. Of course, I'm in the building side. Of course, motherfucker, but no one can against me. Of course, motherfucker, that is what chicken say, that I'm in the building side. Of course, that is what chicken say, but no one can against me, that I'm in the plains, and that I'm gonna go to see you. Of course. Of course, motherfucker, that I'm in the plane, that is what chicken have. Of course, I'm here in my breathing set. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what chicken have. That the police is coming to put us again in jail. Of course, that I'm in my breathing set. Of course, and I'm in my plane, and I'm gonna go to see you. Of course, no one is gonna get me out from there, because I'm in my plane going to see you. Of course, and I give them about the breathing set. Of course, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me, that I'm in the breathing set, and I'm gonna go to see you with my plane, and I give it them. Of course, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me, so come on. Of course, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me, so come on. Of course, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me, so come on. Of course, motherfuckers, I give it them about the games. Of course, I'm going away from the pyramids. They wanna put me again in another pyramid. The police is coming, but I'm gonna give it them. Of course, motherfuckers, I'm a freak. That is what chicken have, that I'm a freak. Of course, motherfucker, that is what chicken have, that I'm gonna go away from the pyramids. Of course, motherfucker, and if you wanna catch me, you're gonna catch me, but I'm a fox counting his own money. Of course, and I don't wanna fall again in another pyramid, another church. Now everyone knows that. Of course, maybe you are gonna suicide in the game. Maybe you're gonna have a church with some dumb people praying to you. Of course, but on the church never. That is what chicken have, that no one goes to church. No one has to go to church. Everyone go out from there. Of course, on the church now, I just go away and walk your way. Of course, that is what chicken have, that no one can against us. So come on. Of course, that is what chicken say, that no one can against us. So come on. Of course, that is what chicken say, that we are gonna have to stand and fly. Of course, that is what chicken have, that on the church now I give them about the sky. Of course, I'm gonna go to another galaxy, to another planet, and I give it them. Of course, I'm flying, motherfucker, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me. Of course, that I'm going direct with my breathing set to see you. Of course, that is what chicken have, that no one can against me. That is what chicken have, so come on. Of course, that is what you can see. Of course, motherfuckers in the church now, and I'm going away from the pyramid, and I'm not gonna fall in another pyramid, and I give them about all the black Nazis who wanna put me again on a pyramid. Of course, I'm going away, of course, and I'm not gonna go there. Of course, that is what you can say, that I'm gonna walk away, and that is what you can have, that no one can against me. Of course, motherfuckers, I'm going away from the pyramid, and I'm not gonna fall in another different but anyhow pyramid. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me, and that I'm not gonna fall in another pyramid. That is what you can have, that I give it them about all them who wanna put me again in jail. Of course, I'm gonna give it them about all the freaks who wanna put me again in jail. Of course, I'm not gonna fall in another pyramid, motherfuckers. That is what you can have. Of course, that is what you can say, that no one can against me. Of course, that I'm your devil, and that I'm going with riding with the cars. Of course, that is what you can have, that no one can against me. That maybe they are gonna suicide, but under church never. Of course, and I let it in a maybe, because you're only gonna have time for a whistle on suicide. Of course, that is what you can have, that on the church never, that I'm going away from the pyramid, and I'm not gonna fall again in another pyramid. Is it clear? Okay, so go on. I go.